Hello, I'm Craig Constantine. Welcome. This is the Podcaster Community Show, short conversations that are not just about podcasting because I like to take the scenic route. Our guest today is Danny Attias. Welcome, Danny.
Thank you very much, Craig.
I always say this all the time because it's true. I'm always excited when people manage to make time to join me. Everybody's schedules, especially now that I don't want to say we're back to normal times, but especially as we're all trying to now I can travel, or now I can get back in the office, or now I can get to this meeting or whatever. As we begin to slot back in, suddenly the box, I took all this stuff out of the box that is my life, and now I'm trying to put it all back in. It doesn't fit. So I think it's a good lesson. I think I should not put some of this stuff back in. But I'm glad that you and I have been, I was going to say, we've been trying to do this for, it's probably been maybe 6, 7, 8 months. And I've been like, hey, and you're just super busy. And I want to pick your brain about preparation. We talked about this a little bit before we pressed record. And I'm hesitant to say this because I don't want to jinx it for either of us, but I find that I do pretty darn well without any preparation. I do, before I do these recordings, I spent the last 15, 20 minutes just listening to your podcast and reading some articles on LinkedIn and just trying to zoom in on Danny so that I didn't have crazy, stupid other stuff in my head. But other than that, I don't really prepare bios on the guests or try to figure out what they want from me. I just kind of try to get on the on-ramp so that when we get, when the lanes come together for this, we're kind of going the same speed. That's all I'm really aiming for. And I know that you mentioned you have a bunch of presentations coming up that you're basically now preparing for. But then we talked about, you have an episode of your show, which is a bonus episode, where you talked about 3 takeaways. And you said that was the hardest thing you've ever done. You did it sort of as a video presentation, kind of modeled like a TED Talk. And my immediate question was, well, wait, first of all, why did you prepare for it? Second of all, what made it so hard was it having to pull lessons? Was it trying to make it actionable? Was it video, having not done video? What was it about that particular talk?
Okay, so good question. The bonus episode, which I think is slotted between episode 15 and 16 of Sondership, and we can come back to what Sondership is in a moment. I got invited to do a talk. I work in technology. I'm a chief digital and information officer in the UK. I work for a higher education establishment, one of the top business schools in the world. And I used to work for a blood cancer charity. And I get invited to do a lot of public speaking. I was rated the number 1 chief information officer in the UK last year. So that's the context. I get invited to do a lot of public speaking. And what I say to them is, happy to do a panel conversation, a Q&A, a fireside chat, basically no preparation. But if they want me to stand in front of an audience for 20 minutes, well, I've got to have a bit of a plan, right? Because I'm monologuing. And I mean, to be fair, even when I'm doing Q&A, I'm monologuing, but I have to do a bit of preparation. So I got invited to do a talk, and it was the first physical event post-COVID, if we are in a post-COVID era, and it was hybrid as well. And I thought, oh, you know what? Someone said to me, hey, Danny, you should do a TED Talk sometime. And I'm like, that's crazy. And then I thought, oh, that could be fun. So when I got invited, they always say, let us know what you want to talk about, give us a synopsis. And I'm going, I can't. I'm really, really bad with a blank sheet of paper. Don't give me a blank sheet of paper. So I get them on a call. I'm like, let's just talk. And we're talking and we say, well, I'm doing this podcast, and it's about seeing other people, right? Seeing the lives that other people have and being compassionate. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe if I can relate this to leadership, how does that influence my ability to be a leader? And then tie the two together. And I ended up kind of calling it, I think I called it Lessons Learned from Speaking to Leaders with Purpose or something like that. So they're like, yeah, that sounds great. And I think, well, I'm going to have to make this fit into 15 minutes and have a plan. And I was freaking out. It's probably extreme, but I was like, wasting a lot of time staring at a blank screen.
Compared to the amount of time you would expend in wasting time for a normal presentation, it was a huge amount of time, right? You're like, this time is not doing anything.
And I've reached out to my friend and fellow podcaster and former guest of this show, Daphne. I can't pronounce her surname, so I won't try. And she's like, Danny, it's really easy. You kind of need a beginning, a middle, and end. You wanna let them know what you're going to talk about what you're going to talk about, and then let them know what you talked about. And then the bit where you actually do the talking about, try and break it down to 3 key things. So I built this grid where it had, block 1, block 2, and block 3. And then block 2 was broken into 3 blocks. It was the 3 things that I'm going to talk about. And I'm like, this is so easy. And I just thought, right, what are the things that I've learned from talking to leaders with purpose? And I was just brainstorming things. Well, privilege really plays a big part. Imposter syndrome plays a big part. It keeps coming up. These things.
Right.
So I picked my 1, 2, 3. And once I had
what was the third one?
Oh, now you're testing me.
I don't remember. I
don't remember.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I was like, oh.
I know imposter syndrome was the first one.
Imposter syndrome was
the privilege was another one. Sorry. I was just like, oh, we kind of did the 3 of them. We should do the 3. It'll come back to us. When we think of it, we'll drop it in.
It might come back to me. And so I thought, okay, great. I've got 1, 2, 3. And then I go, now let me think about guests I've had who've really been strong on those particular topics. So I got a story, right? Tell them the story, make them feel the experience. So I picked those 1, 2, 3 stories, and then I just had to do an intro and an outro, and then it was quite easy by that point. So I put my slides together, which you wouldn't see on the podcast, but there is a video version. So I made it really, really importantly, whilst I was in front of a studio audience, I didn't reference the material on the screen. I didn't say, you can see here, so that it would work on a podcast. And I also try really hard not to make things evergreen, so that it's not dependent on current affairs. You can listen to it a week, a month, a year later, and it still works. And that's really important, because if it's too current, then it's just not relevant after it's been out. It goes stale really quickly.
You make I'm resisting the urge to open up my web browser and go look up the transcript for your other show. But you make some really good points there about, I'm going to say, being aware of as Seth Godin would say, like, who's it for? What's it for? So when you're building a presentation that people are supposed to consume, and it's got to fit in the time, and you're trying to create this arc, my next thought is the podcast that you're creating and the ones like this one that I'm doing, where we're recording a conversation between 2 people. It's basically impossible to do that kind of preparation, given the fact that I don't want to like overload every one of my guests. Okay, we're going to have a pre-call and we're going to spend a half an hour and we're going to block it out. Like, we could imagine doing that, but then you and I are like co-hosts on some show, and we should both get paid. And I think I struggles over, that's a little over exaggerated, but I often wrestle with, I feel like I should do a better job making this conversation really serve the people who are that are listening.
Yeah.
And then I go, yeah, but how do I do a better job? Like, I don't know what the story arc is going to be. So I can't have a beginning, middle, and ending. I don't know. So I make an artificial ending by having a time limit. And I can't figure out what the 3 takeaways are going to be, because I don't know what we're going to talk about. Yeah. Have you noticed that? Like, how do you balance that?
By the way, empathy was the third one. So empathy, the whole point is,
all the ones that I miss, right?
So Sonder is the realization that other people have a life as rich and complex as your own. And it's when you realize that, that's your empathy kind of kicking in. And so that empathy is now fueling your desire to have a positive impact in other people's lives. And then your imposter syndrome is your blocker. I can't do it. I'm not good enough, which is why I made the podcast, so you can listen to all these people and they all suffer the same problem. And you know what? They're good enough. You're all good enough.
Yes.
And then the privilege is, you know what? Don't be shy about your privilege. Use it, leverage it, make it an advantage to help those other people. And those are the kind of the three key things. Your question is really valid.
Thank you for putting that back in, by the way. That's perfect.
It's
and the name of your podcast is Sondership. Does it have a domain name, or is it on?
Yeah, so it's sondership.com. It's on Spotify, it's on iTunes, it's on absolutely everywhere I could get it. If you Google it, it's my word, so it Googles good. And
so back to my question of balancing.
When I started, and I get invited to a few podcasts as well, let's have a pre-call. And I'm like, guys, we don't need a pre-call. But when I started, I started with a pre-call, and what was happening is I was asking questions. They were saying things. I was getting excited. There was energy. And I'm thinking, this is the show. What's going on? And then we try and record and the energy's gone. Because we know the arc, we know the questions. And one of the reasons I created the podcast is I'm really comfortable sitting here and talking, as you can hear. But maybe sometimes I don't listen enough. I don't engage my own curiosity enough. And the podcast forced me to listen, don't get distracted, really engage and ask questions. My deal with myself was don't allow your voice to be heard more than 15% of the show, because they're tuning in for the guest. They might come back for you, right? Because they like you and your style and your theme, but they're not
Let's
coming
go on
to
a journey.
listen to it, right? Yeah. So this is like the 1 hour where I listen, really, and that's great. And you hear so much more, you discover so much more. So I have had people literally who I've never met, don't know the background, don't know the story. And I'm like, you know what? Shall I just press record and let's have the conversation? That was episode 2, actually. So even episode 2, episode 1, we did a little bit of prep for, and it worked really well. So I'm kind of happier not doing that. I also find I've got one episode. I won't say my favorite because, like your children, you can't have favorites. But episode 7 and 8 are kind of my favorite. And the reason is because this wonderful woman, Elena Sinel, told me her story, and I was like, my jaw was dropping. I was like, what? No, really? Wow. And her story, we talked for an hour and a half, and I didn't cut anything other than the middle. I cut it in the middle and made it part 1 and part 2, because her story had like the before and after. And I did the tune in next week to listen to episode blah, 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 with some highlights. And then on the second episode, I was like, previously on Sondership. Oh, there was so much work. It was so much work to create those 2-minute snippets at the beginning. I mean, it took more energy than producing the entire series, the entire 2 episodes. So I just realized that's not my thing. The designing, the planning, the story arc, the structure of questions is just not how my brain operates, and I'd rather just come and have a conversation and kind of get curious. And sure, I've got the editing tech later where I can cut some stuff out where if it got a little bit boring, or I could just stop in the middle and go, right, let's just take a break. Is there anything we're not covering? Is there anything you want?
Right.
We can slip that back in later. So it's not live. We get the episode. We get the opportunity to do that. Very rare that I get an opportunity. I need to move things around. Sometimes we'll cut some stuff out because either I think, why did I make that comment? I sounded really pretentious. Cut that out. That sounds bad. Or their point,
I know what you mean.
They made their point like 5 minutes ago, and now it's nerves or waffling. So let's just kind of cut that out. But generally, I just rather run with it. And if I'm live, I'll tell you one last thing. There's the difference between live and pre-recorded. Now, to me, when I'm with a guest, it's live, right? We're live now. I'm talking, I'm engaging, I'm focused. But if I had to, my first episode, the sneak peek, 60 seconds, right? What am I going to say? How am I going to structure it? I had to record a 60-second Christmas message for my company a couple of years ago. I'm not exaggerating when I said it was over 100 takes. I'm
Right.
like, how hard is it to go, we've had a
Happy
great
holidays.
year, thank you very much, happy holidays, blah, 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 right? So it would be easier to phone a friend and look at them in the eye and then say it, and I get it in one take. And I've got some stuff where I am doing it in one take without any problem, because you've got the energy and the drive and the engagement. And when I've had to record some presentations during the pandemic, and they're like, oh no, we're going to pre-record this. You're basically standing on a stage, and I'm like, this is never going to work. I cannot do it. So what I need you to do it. I need you to join me on Zoom, and I need to have your camera on, and then I'm going to do the presentation to you, and then I'll do it in one take, and it'll be fine. And it was just perfect. But yeah, this whole pre-recorded, you're in your room, you're hearing your own voice, you've got no feedback through interaction or eye contact. I just can't do it.
It's definitely, I mean, most people listening to this show, I think, are podcast creators or people who wish they could or are thinking about it or whatever, but they understand, like, yeah, I'm by myself. In fact, if I'm not by myself, I get grumpy because I can hear you in the background. Like, we like people, podcasters in closets. It's totally a thing, or under blankets or pillow forts. And there's, I don't want to say like it's vicious, but because we're by ourselves, like literally working by ourselves all the time, except for when we're recording with the person. So all the time outside of the interactive part, it's up to us to decide when is good enough. So what's the Pareto principle, 80-20 rule. And you go, well, I could actually make this better. Like, I know that if I did this, I could make that and I could fix this and I could re-record my intro. And it's just so hard to go, all right, I mean, it's good enough. I'm going to call this done and ship it.
I'd say take that, I can make it better, and do it. Make it better next time, on the next one, and make them incrementally better each time, rather than having to worry about reworking.
Amen.
I did 2 live recordings of my show. One was in a kind of podcasting studio. I'm very lucky at work. We've built a studio that my team run. So that was really nice, getting a guest in and having a chat. And then at the end, not clicking leave meeting, but actually going for dinner.
Coffee? You're right.
Yeah, and it's really lovely. But another one we filmed. And so when you're filming, it's difficult to cut the coughs and the, oops. So it kind of felt like really pressured. And it was in an extravagant London hotel right across the road from the Ritz. It was pretty special. And we got a professional cameraman in, and I think that's episode, I can't remember, Harriet Green. So there's a video version of that. And but also we got a cameraman, but we couldn't afford a sound guy. So he had a camera, he had a mic, and then he had another mic. And then I had my regular Yeti Nano, which I brought on a stand and plugged into my laptop. But it's designed to be pretty close, not from a distance. And I put it in the table between us. And I was terrified that we'd done all this work and done this record. This lady used to be the CEO of IBM Asia Pacific. Okay, it was kind of a big deal getting her time. And in the end, both of his audio streams were terrible. Couldn't use them. So I'm like, oh my God, it's me and my Nano. It's just me and Yeti. And I listened to it, and it was like way off in the background. And I'm like, okay. So I'm like crossing my fingers, and I put it through Auphonic, and it was great.
I think I remember you making a post about that because we were talking about Auphonic, and you were like, look what I just did. Saved by technology.
Yeah, I did write an article about that.
It's challenging when you have all these different things that you're trying to juggle. And I don't do it for this show. I've often thought it'd be cool, but for one of my other projects called Movers Mindset, I've done, that has like 130 episodes. I think about 80 or so of them are done in person. So that show is predominantly done in person. And it's usually just myself and one other production assistant, and I do all the audio mixing and bring mics and stands, but it's audio only, no video.
Yeah.
And it is a delight to have a conversation with someone. Like, we go to their space, go to their place and, walk into I'm like walking around like, well, let's use this room, the one that's the quietest, and like set our stuff up and talk with them before. And it takes this experience that I think most podcasters who would be listening are used to, this digital, Danny and Craig on flat screens. We're not in the same room. And it like takes this to a whole nother level. So I totally recommend, if people get a chance, even if you do it just for fun, maybe I'll use it, maybe I won't. Like, try recording in person. The tech problems go through the roof. It gets hard. It gets complicated.
I
But
definitely
it's so
thought
fun.
about, I only had 3 days notice, which is why it's so stressy. But otherwise I would have bought a Zoom recorder and I would have got some little mics, some stands. And,
Oh, now we're in the technology and gear. Yeah.
and I'm like, this is an excuse. But actually, there is one other thing I want to talk about, which has just occurred to me. So I kept saying last year I did the Alt MBA. In fact, a year ago today, I was doing the Alt MBA. Seth Godin, look it up; it's amazing, and it's where I got the word Sunder from. And I had a lot of energy. Right, a lot of energy, and as I was finishing it, I'm thinking, what am I going to do with this time? I know I'm going to do a podcast. What about? I don't know. Doesn't matter. Who with? I don't know. What's it going to be called? And
Ship
I
it.
literally, I just boom, boom, boom. Literally from the moment the Alt MBA finished, 8 weeks later, we were live with 5 episodes in the bag. A teaser trailer, a regular trailer, a website, a name, a description, artwork, a t-shirt, blah, 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 blah. And I kept going like one a week. And I was fine. I was really enjoying it. I had a lot of energy during the kind of lockdown period. And I even started a new job, and that gave me a lot of energy, but I was going in and out of the office. I was now recording in the evenings. I was pretty tired. Some of them went a bit flat. In fact, they were so flat, we said, you know what, let's just re-record this tomorrow. And we did twice, actually, re-record episodes because we both said that was a bit flat. And I kept making this joke, which is because people are like, yeah, how long are you going to do this? I'm like, well, at any time I can just go, that's series 1. See you for season 2.
Right.
And I took the break over Christmas. I'd already pre-planned 3-week gap over Christmas, and the energy never came back. Right, just did not come back. And the idea was to start recording and get some more, get a backlog. And in the end, I went and renamed them all: season 1, episode 1, season 2, 1, episode 2. And I just thought, right, what I need to do now is I need to the original plan was get 4 or 5 in the bag and then record every 1 or 2 weeks. But basically I can keep up a cadence, but there's this buffer in the middle. And that buffer got taken out by people calling in sick with COVID. And all of a sudden I was hand to mouth. Like one day I used to launch on a Tuesday morning, and there was one point, Friday night, I'm calling up Freddie Quick, episode 15, I think. And I'm like, Freddie, please, I just need half an hour of your time this weekend because I am out completely dry. And I didn't want to break my momentum. I think building up the momentum is so, so, so important, isn't it? So effectively I haven't started or thinking about season 2. I want to do a season 2 because I'm feeling the energy now talking to you and I enjoy it. But I think what I'll do is get the whole season in the bag and then just trickle it out in my own time, 1 a week, once every 2 weeks. But I want to break the dependency between me and my time and my energy and the release schedule, and just literally launch it in its own time. So I think that's what I need to do. But I'm tempted to think about maybe having a theme and then just do like 10 episodes, but around a theme. But again, that goes into my
I'm thinking
planning.
This reminds me of your planning thing, the idea
which is not my
of
thing.
not having to publish to a schedule. That sounds like your thing. Having a theme that runs through the whole season, that doesn't sound like your thing. I think you know the answer.
The theme thing I think is just go and find 10 more amazing people to speak to and get just really excited about their story. And people are still approaching me regularly. I've got a story. Do you want to share my story? Being in a business school, I've got access to some of the greatest minds in the world who are doing some really amazing things and having an influence in the world. So I'm rambling on, and the clock is ticking on your
that's fine.
on your format.
If people are still listening at 24 minutes, people can press stop at any time. But you do make a good point, and I think it is a good place for us to decide that we could stop for today. Danny, as I said at the beginning, it was a pleasure to get a chance to finally talk to you like interactively in real time. And thanks so much for taking the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig.